Hi everyone. We're going to pick up for your assignment where where we ended up in class today, which is talking about JSON. JSON again is JavaScript object notation. This is a data format that is very common on the web. It's often used to distribute what we would think of as feeds of data. That's going to be data from web applications, things like social media, but also, as we're going to see shortly, it's basically a place where a single URL, you're going to get data that updates on a regular basis and that gets overwritten in that same place, right? So we're going to look, for example, at city bike data, and we'll see that at any given time, it's actually updated at about 10-second intervals, that at any given time, it's going to show us the current state of the system, but it's not showing us historical data, and it's obviously not showing us future data. And this is in contrast to what we usually see with CSV files, with TXT files, which tend to show us things that have already happened, right? So when we see CSV files, first of all, those aren't very convenient to parse for web applications, for example. So it's not the kind of thing that's as easily consumed by a web page and converted, let's say, to a visualization or just written in a nicer format to an HTML page. CSV isn't really good for that. JSON is very good for that, and it's one of the reasons why it's so dominant. It's one of the reasons why it has overtaken XML as a popular data format on the web. But to just understand kind of the difference in scope there, CSV, TXT files tend to be historical, whereas our JSON files are going to be whatever is current at the moment for the update interval for that particular data set. So it'll become a little bit more concrete as we look forward, as we move forward, but hopefully this will clarify for you a little bit of what we're trying to accomplish with these things. Now, obviously, JSON isn't only good for currently updated data. That's the kind of data sources that we tend to find in JSON. But we can also write JSON ourselves, and that's going to be the exercise this week, is that we're actually going to, each of you is going to create a custom JSON file that describes something that is, that is relevant to your life. So in this case, I'm going to continue the example that I began in class, which was about books. And I'm going to show you an example of writing a JSON file. And your assignment for this week is going to be to create your own JSON file that describes something in your life that you're interested in or you care about. So for starters here, I've got my JSON page in the background here for reference, which I find useful. But the question, of course, is what program am I going to use to write this? Now, technically, I can do this in any text editor, but there are some helpful things to think about when we're deciding where to write a JSON file. So JSON, like any data file, we talked about proprietary formats, and in text, some of the proprietary formats or kind of formats that have extra information associated with them are things like, for example, Microsoft Word, even an open document format, right, which is an open source version, an open source software that's kind of like Microsoft Word. We want the absolute simplest thing that we can get. So I'm on a Macintosh computer right now, so what I'm going to use is a program called TextEdit. Some of you may be familiar with it. And I'm going to use TextEdit in a very particular way. So when I open this up, if I were to say, type a message here, and go to save this file, what you'll see is that the extension here is .rtf, okay? .rtf stands for rich text format. And what that means is that that this will support some extra formatting like bolding, italicization, smart quotes, things like that. And those are really great when I'm writing, when I'm writing an article, for example, right? Because those are things that I might want to include in an article. When it comes to data files, it's the simpler the better, right? So just as a CSV file is simpler than an Excel file, we want something that's even more basic than a rich text file. And so what I'm going to do is that the default on TextEdit, although it's a very basic text editor, the default on TextEdit is that rich text format. So I'm going to use a command to actually change this to what we call plain text. Plain text means exactly that. It will type the characters, it will show the characters that I type, I can't do any formatting. I can't bold. I can't italicize. I won't get smart quotes. You know, all the things that sort of make something nice to read on the page are going to be missing from this. But what that's important for is it makes it, that's the kind of text that the computer can easily read as data, right? So if I'm on a Mac, I can do this with a shortcut. It's Apple Shift T. And you can see right away it's been reflected in that file. See, I get this monospaced font that looks kind of programmy, you know, it looks kind of like code, how we're used to seeing code. So that's me converting it to plain text, which is an important first step when dealing with code. Now, as we get later in the semester, we'll introduce a program called Aptana that I mentioned earlier today that we'll use for actually writing code. But for this exercise, we're not going to worry about getting set up in Aptana at this point. It's just fine to use text edit. If you are looking at this on a PC, then the thing to use is Notepad, not Notepad++, just plain old Notepad. It ought to default to a plain.txt version. And I can test and see if I've done this correctly, because if I go to save this file, it's now got on the bottom here plain text encoding, and it says if no extension is provided, use .txt. So I'm going to say sample JSON. Okay, and again, this works because JSON is just text, right? So it doesn't matter that the extension is .txt. The file extension I could change manually to .json. File extensions in general are actually just informative for the computer. All it does is tell the computer basically, this is the program that you should use to open this, right? Attempt to open this with this kind of program. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on my JSON file here. And I've decided that I am going to do my books. And that's the type of books in particular that I'm going to look at are going to be illustrated books. Okay, and that I'm going to look at books, that I'm going to describe books particularly in the format of hardcovers. And so it looks like I'm just kind of typing this out. But the reality is that I've been thinking about this a little bit. I've actually sort of done some experimentation already. And mainly the thing that I want to point out here is that when I have a list of things, okay, so here I have an example of, so menu ID file, blah, 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 right? The point is that when I have more than one item, okay, I need to give it a name, and I need to use those square brackets to indicate that there's more than one thing coming. So everything that appears between matching curly braces is what we would call an object, right? And as you can see, that object can have these key value pairs, right? Which is the thing on the left is the key, the thing on the right is the value. We always wrap them in quotation marks. And between them, we see there's a colon. And if I have more than one key value pair inside of an object, then I need to separate them with commas. And if I have multiple objects that are part of a single larger object, right? In this case, menu item has 3 things inside of it. Then I need to have these square brackets that indicate that there's a list. So going back to my text edit file here, I've done my formatting a little bit differently, so I might want to change that. So instead of putting this curly brace up here, I'm going to put it down here. Or sorry, instead of down there, I'm going to put it up there. And in hardcover, I'm going to say, look, I'm going to call it hardcovers. I'm going to say, look, this is going to be a list, right? So right away, one of the things I like to do is I like to match my brackets and braces right from the start. And you'll see this is very common in a lot of programs that are designed for coding. They're going to do that for you, right? Because then you don't kind of have to figure out when to do that. And you'll notice that this is not formatting nicely because, of course, I'm not using a special program. I'm just using plain old text edit here to do this. So I'm going to say hardcovers, and then the question is, what are my items? Well, I have the things that I'm interested in recording about this. I'm talking about illustrated books, so I want to know what the title is. And I'm going to start out with, let's say, Alice in Wonderland. And I have looked this up before, so I can also say that the author is Lewis Carroll. And I'm actually going to expand this so that I can see that was naturally wrapping, right? So I haven't actually added any carriage returns in here. Lewis Carroll, and then I'm going to need to look up the illustrator. But I'll leave a space for that. I'll leave that blank for now. That's fine. And so now, because I've said, look, there's going to be more than one item here, I'm going to put a comma because I'm going to put in my next item. So again, I'm going to start by opening and closing my braces, and then I'm going to fill in between. And so I'm going to say title, let's see, what's another one here? I'm going to do the tale, oops, I need quotation marks. The Tale of Peter Rabbit. It's another nice one. And the author on that is Beatrix Potter. It's a classic. If you don't know it, I'm a big fan. And she is actually also the illustrator on that. So that's simple. Okay, and I'm going to do another one in here, and the title is Life Doesn't Frighten Me, and the author on that is Maya Angelou, and the illustrator is Jean-Michel Basquiat. Oops, Basquiat. Okay, and so now I have a list of 3 books. Oh, I've forgotten this is John Tenniel. Okay, and so now I have my list, and so again, this is where I just need to make sure that I've got everything matching, right? So I know that I have opened and closed all of these balance. Doesn't look like I'm missing any quotation marks. And I've opened my square brace and closed my square brace. So here I've got one curly brace that I need to close. I've got another curly brace that I need to close. And I think I might be missing one. I think actually I probably need one here. And so that makes a third. So the way that I'm going to test this out is I'm going to copy this and I'm going to take it over to JSONLint, which is actually linked right here at the bottom of that page. And I can just paste it in here. And I'm going to check it out and it will tell me whether or not this works. Now, for some reason, my quotation marks seem to have gotten all out of whack here. And I'm not really sure why. So you can see that you can tell, right, that they're like a little bit angled, as though they're trying to be smart. So I'm going to try to figure out why that happened. But once I correct this, you'll notice right away that it actually did this nice formatting for me, right? So that's a sign that things are in pretty good shape. I'm going to go ahead and correct these, and we'll see if it works. So I have gone through and corrected all my quotes, and I also figured out what was going wrong with my attempt to use text edit. So I'm going to show you how to fix that in just a second. But the thing that I want to point out here is that if you look back a couple of seconds, 30 seconds or so, what you'll notice is that as I corrected those quotes to be smart quotes, we started to see highlighting here, right? So it started tinting the text a different color. And what that is it's a clue that things are going well, right? So for all of you who are using text edit for this, here's what I recommend. Before you start working on your file, you need to make a couple of adjustments. One is to go into the text edit menu, and under preferences, you need to uncheck smart quotes here. That's going to come up for you. And then you also need to go under edit, the substitutions, it's going to have smart quotes selected. You need to unselect that, right? Otherwise, you're going to end up with the problem that I had, which is smart quotes, which is going to give you trouble. So I'll give you all the specifics of the assignment, what's required in Piazza. But if you have any questions about how to do this, please feel free to post a question there or reach out to me directly. But yeah, hopefully this will be straightforward, and I look forward to seeing you all next week.